Hello, Amna, Khadija here. Before starting, I would like to give a brief introduction of yours. So we are having Amna Baig today with us. You are the technical, and you are presenting the technical presentation. You are the superintendent of police with Federal Investigation Agency and police expert over a decade of experience. Your work mainly focus on human rights protection, digital governance, gender response policy implementation. You have led a really transformative initiatives, including Pakistan First Gender Protection Unit and Helpline. You have standardized the investigation protocols for special sexual units, and you currently you have conducted a global research on economic justice from the Princeton University. Uh, okay, so as you have your hold on such topic, and you have also a university from the Oxford University in an LLB degree from the University of London. So keeping all this and your remarkable work in view, we would like to proceed with the questions, which is our today's topic related to the tech facilitated abuse. Fine. So my first question from you will be related to the tech facilitated. In your role as a superintendent of police in Pakistan, you have been at the forefront of addressing tech facilitated abuse. Can you elaborate on the most pressing challenges law enforcement faces when it comes to tackling cyber crimes, such as online harassment and exploitation?
Thank you, Khatija, for your introduction and kind words. I think it's such a relevant conversation that we're having today. I joined the police service in Pakistan 8 years ago with a focus on ensuring there is justice for the vulnerable communities, specifically women, children, and trans persons. And over time, I have seen a change in the nature of gender based violence. In the past few years, so when I started initially, I would receive thousands and thousands of complaints through my social media accounts about gender based violence in Pakistan in its traditional form. But for the past 2, 3 years, I started noticing a change in the trend. The change was that while we were at the police stations, or when I was receiving these complaints from these social media, accounts, I saw that most of these women were now complaining about uh, digital gender-based violence. They were talking about harassment, they were talking about blackmailing, and they had no idea how to navigate that space. So when I went for my master's degree, my focus throughout the degree and towards my summer project was on how to address the pressing concerns related to tech-facilitated gender-based violence through the police system. And I researched in detail about what the conditions are for now. What we have seen is that we need to first understand how TFGBV works. So tech facilitated gender-based violence has, like the traditional gender-based violence, has two components. The first component is the structural form of tech facilitated gender-based violence, and the second component is the direct form of tech facilitated gender-based violence. So the structural form of tech facilitated gender-based violence is when there is so much abuse, hate, there's pushing you to a corner. But then again, that sort of gender-based violence is not so much criminal in nature, right? And for that part of tech facilitated gender-based violence, which is the structural form, we need to come up with good regulations. But the more important part of tech facilitated gender based violence is the direct form of tech facilitated gender based violence, where the way it's perpetrated is that you had a direct threat, not just online, but in your offline life as well. So there's huge concerns, and you're at a risk of these online threats translating into offline threats. And that is where the criminal justice system comes into play. That is where the police comes into play, and that is how, now we are looking at tech facilitated gender based violence in Pakistan. So, as your question was, how can police better tackle it? I think there's a long, long way to go. We need to understand that technology is changing at a rapid pace. Police is the implementer of law. In order for police to do good, in order for police to ensure access to justice in such cases, it is extremely important for us to have robust laws. Right now, the laws have a lot of legal lacunas and gaps. They're inadequate to address the changing nature of complaints. As we have seen with the with the introduction of AI, the nature of complaints have completely changed, even in the tech facilitated gender-based violence realm. So how do we address that? So one of the things is that we need to have adequate laws. The second thing is, which is equally important, is having access to justice mechanisms in place so that all of the population which is vulnerable to these threats is comprehensively has a comprehensive reach to the state, to the police stations. Right now, Pakistan has very limited access in terms of tech facilitated gender-based violence. We generally, at the moment, have only 15 cybercrime police stations. It's a huge country. It's a country of 240 million people. Half of them are women, and the access is severely limited. So another thing that we really need to focus in terms of ensuring that there is some sort of accountability of tech facilitated gender-based violence through the criminal justice system, we really need to address the problem of access to justice. It is severely limited at this point. And the third and the most important thing, I think, in terms of direct form of TFGBV, is that we need to have good investigations, because at the moment there is a huge concern around the impunity that exists within the realm of tech facilitated gender-based violence. And to address the impunity concerns, we really need to have better investigations. Now, the nature of this form of gender-based violence is very different from the traditional form. So in the traditional form of GBV, we would have all the evidence that we need to investigate a case properly within the country. However, with tech facilitated gender-based violence, that's not the case. We really have to timely get in touch with social media platforms. Data sharing has become incredibly important in these investigations. And for us to have a comprehensive investigation done on a case to take it to the courts for prosecution, we need collaborations with these social media platforms. So right now, we are also in the phase of navigating this new realm. Some of the things that we are doing, I'll be discussing later on. But at the moment, I feel these three key areas need to be addressed as soon as possible.
Okay, before going to the next question, I would like if you can give a brief example of the two type of different sort of tech abuse you have just mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you give some a brief examples of those? What are those?
Absolutely. So I'm a feminist at heart. I've been working towards this issue for so long. When we talk about TFGBV and when we mention the word violence, generally people think that, everything that TFGBV has to do is criminal in nature. We need to understand that the laws of the country are different, right? For each country, there's a different law in what is categorized as violence. The second concern when it comes to TFGBV is a lot of concern around freedom of speech. So there's a balancing that needs to be done when we're talking about categorizing it as violence. Now, when I say what direct form of TFGBV is or what structural form of TFGBV, it's this categorization that I'm talking about. The structural form of TFGBV is when there is a targeted campaign, where there's disproportionate abuse and hate towards women on social media platforms. And these women are pushed out of these social media platforms and they go silent because they just do not know how to handle that sort of hate and abuse. The studies have shown, like, for example, I'll give you another statistic, is that 95% of the pornographic content that is being generated currently through the AI platforms is of women, and that is being used against them. So this disproportionateness of this particular tech facilitated gender-based violence, which is threats, which is not threats, which is abuse, which is hate, that is the structural form of it. This is not generally categorized as criminal in nature.
And it's on the bigger level.
It is
to a bigger community.
Absolutely. And what it does is that it slowly pushes women out of these spaces. So we see that women are the target of female politicians are 3 times more likely to get hate and abuse than male politicians. Now, social media platforms have become these big, important, I'd say, components of political campaigns. So if women politicians are getting more hate over there, it's not a level playing field. That is the structural form of TFGBV. And the direct form of it is when there is non-consensual sharing of pictures, when there are threats, when your life is at risk, when there is information which should not have been shared is shared, called doxing on these platforms. That is criminal in nature in most of the countries. So that is the differentiation between two, but we have to address both.
Okay. Great. Okay, let's move to our next question. My next question would be, you have highlighted the importance of specialized training for police officers to handle tech-related crimes. Could you walk us through the training programs that have been implemented, how they equip the officers to investigate digital offenses effectively?
I mean, I just mention over here. So we are in the process of putting together the first national framework for tech-facilitated gender-based violence in Pakistan.
Great.
For now, there were civil society organization Nigat Dad. She's a huge activist. She has been doing a lot of great work for so long. Probably hers and a few other organizations were the only ones talking about it. The policy makers were not talking about TFGBV as much as they should have been. So we put together the first national consultation and roundtable on tech-facilitated gender-based violence recently, and now we are working towards a national framework to address the concerns that exist within the criminal justice system in terms of addressing the issue of TFGBV. And one of the main things that we have understood for now is that there is so much attention that needs to be given to trainings.
Right.
So the law enforcement, which is supposed to handle these complaints, even though they have developed expertise over time by working within this particular domain, there have not been such significant trainings as there should have been.
Yeah.
For them to understand this crime better, for them to investigate this crime better, and most importantly, for the prosecution and the judges to understand the dynamics of TFGBV. What we are seeing, what I saw, one of my findings from my research, which was extremely important, I thought, was that Pakistan has a common law system, and there was not enough common law being made around the issue. And when I asked people who are experts in the field, I asked them the reason for that, and they told me that that's because the judges are not trained in TFGBV, right? So for us to just consider police as the component for all of the criminal justice system, that would not be correct. We need to understand that the criminal justice system has a lot more components to it than just the police service. We have the prosecutors, we have the judges. So the trainings need to be across the board. Right now, yes, of course, there are trainings that are being conducted. However, we need to improve upon those. And that has been one of our main findings.
Great. Okay. So let's move to the third question. As from your this answer, I could take this picture of the situation that as the public is misusing the technology, so the criminal justice system actors need to have their hands on the technology so they can deal it more efficiently rather than dealing it with the basic procedures and manners. Okay. So my third question is, addressing online abuse requires collaboration across multiple sectors.
Yes.
How do you facilitate cooperation between government agencies, the tech companies, and the civil society to create a more comprehensive response to cyber crimes?
I mean, Khatija, I think there's one thing that I'm going to repeat myself, and because which I mentioned in the start as well, was as a police officer, I look at uh, investigations very seriously, and it has always been one of my main concerns. So there are two things that, as a police officer, I feel are very, very important. The one thing that I think takes precedence even over investigation is access to justice, which I have mentioned earlier, and the second is investigation. This is a different sort of gender-based violence. This is not like the regular gender-based violence, as I mentioned, because this requires collaborations not just between the local law enforcement, but also between social media platforms, big techs. This is very new to us. We generally, when transnationally organized crimes are being investigated, it's a different ball game. There are specialized units to do that. Even though with the cyber crimes we have these specialized units, but the quantum of complaints that come through these, through these cybercrime reporting centers across Pakistan, we are not able to, at this point, handle all of those complaints comprehensively in terms of investigation. Why? One reason, because there's not enough coordination mechanism in place. Second, we are not able to timely address most of these complaints because the social media platforms do not have a coordination mechanism in place with our law enforcement agencies. So I'll give you an example. So for example, in Pakistan, according to the law in place, You cannot register a case against an anonymous account, even if there is severe nature of tech facilitated gender-based violence that has been propagated by that particular account. You can't do that. You can't register a case, right? That massively limits access to justice. And we can only register a case until and unless an inquiry has been sent to the relevant social media platform, and the social media platform shares the data behind the account, the user data behind the account. Until and unless that's done, there is no case. So the criminal justice system cannot come into, it cannot,
Inaction.
Inaction. It can't. So what do we do then? So that is another thing that we are right now. What happens is that we have very good, strong relations with the big tech, but they are from person to person. So as such, a mechanism does not exist, right? So if a unit has developed its trust with the particular social media platforms, they have these dashboards shared with us. We have a link officer who's in touch with them. They have a link officer who is in touch with us. However, it's not coordinated on a national scale. One. The second thing is that it's not coordinated for all the social media platforms. So it's a work in progress. We are looking at expanding it. We are looking at making a national coordination mechanism, so that we have it for everybody equally, all the law enforcement agencies equally. And also there needs to be a coordination mechanism, not just between the international social media platforms, but within the law enforcement agencies in Pakistan. Work is being done on that as well. Hopefully soon we will have a coordinated national response to this issue.
Okay. As you have mentioned the tech agencies and the government, but what role civil society can play in all this?
That's a very good question, Khadija. So, civil society has been doing excellent work in Pakistan in regards to TFGBV. We have Digital Rights Foundation with Nigadad heads. They have a helpline which is extremely helpful. Her organization also puts out these reports, which are again, give insight into what this condition of tech facilitated gender based violence is in Pakistan. And most importantly, I think what they're doing is they're the trusted partners with social media platforms. So their trust with the social media platforms helps massively in certain cases where data sharing is limited.
Okay.
So I have to give it out to them that they're doing great work. All of these aspects are extremely important for us in order to address the concern.
And one more question is, do they have a connection with international social media platforms?
Absolutely. So they are the trusted partners for these social media platforms. Some of them, not all of them, but wherever they are a lot of help to us.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move to our next question. Okay, so you have mentioned the need to strengthen legal frameworks to better support victims of cybercrimes. What specific legal changes do you believe are necessary to protect individuals and hold perpetrators accountable in the digital age?
So one of the things which is very important at this moment, Khatija, is that we did a needs assessment of the sort of complaints that were coming in, or whether they were the law was comprehensive enough to address them. As I said, technology is changing very rapidly. We cannot change our laws accordingly, right? So one of the main things that we need to do is we need to train our judges for them to pass to strengthen our common law mechanism. One. The second thing is that we need to define tech facilitated gender based violence in clear terms in the law. I'll give you two examples of what's happening right now in terms of changing nature of complaints and how the law is not addressing them comprehensively. So if there is a case of a blackmail, so if a man is blackmailing a woman, telling her that I'm going to share your non-consensual pictures with your family, or I'm going to share it with the media or with the public, until and unless he shares those pictures, law does not come into effect. So the law is limited. So the law says that the pictures or the material needs to be shared, transmitted, etc. What about the blackmail on its own? So there is a lot of redefining that needs to be done. There's a lot of specificity in the law that is required. The second issue is, as I mentioned, the law is limited in cases of anonymous accounts. So a lot of TFGBV is perpetrated through anonymous accounts. So we need to have a mechanism in place where at least action is taken. There need to be robust, as I said, coordinating mechanisms with the social media, just all of them. I'm going to repeat myself in saying that, so that we can timely address these complaints. And when I say timely, I keep mentioning this because what we need to understand, Khadija, is that Pakistan is a very traditional society.
I agree.
It's a very conventional society. So the women who face these online threats are at a serious risk of offline harms. And for us, time is of essence, and most of the complaints are very serious in nature in that regard. So for us, the concerns also relate to the offline harms that are emanating from these complaints. So again, to have laws in place which ensure access to justice and timely redressal of these complaints, and most importantly, specifically defining what tech facilitated gender based violence is because of the disproportionate nature of the crime.
Okay, great. Okay, Amna, let's move to our last question. Uh, what personally motivated you to focus on combating tech facilitated abuse? And what do you believe is the long term impact of this work on victims and society as a whole?
I think, Khadija, so, like, because there was not a lot of talk when it happened to me, it took me such a long time to address these concerns. One of the reasons was that I did not know where to go.
Yeah.
I did not know what was happening. And I did not even know half of the time it was criminal in nature. Trust me, uh, b- for a law enforcement officer, that's a really not a good realizations when you realize it later on. So I'll tell you why. So I started using social media very early on in my career as a law enforcement officer, and uh, initially it was great. I had fantastic response. I thought it as a medium where women would reach out to me with their concerns, with their complaints, and I try to redress them. We did a lot of good advocacy through these platforms. We did a lot of information campaigns around TFGBV through these platforms, sorry, gender-based violence through these platforms. It was great. But then eventually, what I started realizing for the past 2, 3 years was that there was a lot of negativity that started generating on in my comment section, in the reposts that were done around me, and none of them actually had any truth to them. Like, it was just pure hate. What I did was, first, I reduced the amount of posts that I would make because I was conscious of all the hate that was coming my way, which I felt that I did not deserve, and none of the allegations and the abuse that was coming towards me had any truth to it. But I had no idea what was happening. Why was it happening was another question. But for somebody like me who was considered an empowered woman in Pakistan, I was not able to do anything about it. And interestingly, it was only after last year when I started properly researching these phenomena, I realized that it's not just happening to me, it's happening to a lot of women. Almost every other woman who is an opinion leader on these big tech social media platforms is going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And it is the whole process was universal in nature, I might say. So it was happening to women in the US, it was happening to the women in Pakistan, it was happening to the women in Africa. Um, and that was a very strong realization in regards to my fight for this cause. I realized that it is not okay that women are retracting from socio-economic political spheres just because they are being silenced. When I go to these platforms, sorry, these roundtables internationally or these conferences to talk about it, one of the things that comes up again and again is that they have a name for it now, which is called the chilling effect. So this disproportionate hate is now having a chilling effect on women's participation in the socio-economic political spheres. And I realized that nobody was pointing it out, nobody was talking about it, and eventually women were retracting, which was a very, I'd say, a strong realizations in regards to what was happening to me as well. And then simply also the direct form of TFGBV, which has impacted so many women in Pakistan. So many women have committed suicide. So many women have quit politics because there has been so much TFGBV. So many women have been killed because their pictures have been
Leaked.
shared or leaked, or and so many women are now distressed and stressed because they're continuously being blackmailed. And then when I looked at the quantum of complaints, it was of course I had to do something about it. So that was my motivation. We're hopeful that we will have proper solutions. We will have the gaps filled. We will have a robust criminal justice system to address this issue, and I'm hoping that everybody's going to come together and ensure that that happens.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree to you, Amna, because looking at the situation and living in the society, I would say if I personally came across to any such situation, it will be really difficult for me to handle it, and it will be really difficult for me to think of the possible things to do, how to get out of it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of girls or women, I would say, would be facing this
Yeah.
issue, even if they are working women, even if they are homemakers,
Yeah.
whatsoever. And every age of female is facing these type of challenges in their life. So it's a great initiative, and I wish you best of luck for
Thank you.
this.
Thank you.
And it seems that, yeah, it will go beyond the limits, and it will make a change and difference in the society.
Thank
So
you, Khadija.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.